Girl claims she can perform miracles for money, but what they discover is unbelievable. Leave a comment, giving my story a rating from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The wrought iron gates of the grandest mansion in the sprawling metropolis of Chicago creaked in the morning wind as a small figure approached. The 4-year-old child, with a frail appearance that made her look even younger, clutched the ornate bars tightly. Her large, piercing eyes contrasted sharply with her skeletal frame covered in dirty rags. In the distance, the glass and concrete towers of the city loomed like silent giants. But here, on this exclusive street where only the ultra-rich dared to reside, the silence was broken only by the sound of her bare feet on the cold asphalt. Across the perfectly manicured lawn, the owner of the property watched from a second-story window. The 30-year-old CEO, with striking, matinee idol features that often landed him in the business hottest section of Forbes and Fortune, held a cooling cup of coffee in his fingers. His dark hair was disheveled, and deep circles under his eyes betrayed yet another sleepless night. Since losing his wife in a tragic accident 2 years ago, mornings had become an unbearable burden. The little beggar pressed her face against the bars, and her reedy voice cut through the morning air. "I know how to heal your sons." The man nearly dropped his mug. He rushed down the stairs, his footsteps echoing on the polished marble of the foyer. When he reached the gate, he found those childish eyes fixed on his, carrying a disconcerting confidence for someone so young. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice hoarse with surprise. "Your 3 boys. I know how to make them walk." The child spoke with a seriousness that sent a chill down the CEO's spine. "For $1,000. The millionaire felt his heart race. His triplets, born with severe motor impairments, were on the 4th floor of the mansion, likely playing with the physical therapists who came daily to try and make some progress. For 4 long years, he had poured his immense fortune into doctors, experimental treatments, trips to specialized clinics around the world. Nothing had worked. "How could a child like you—" he began, but was interrupted. "I've been watching them for weeks. I know what to do." She extended her tiny hand through the bars. $1,000. Something in the determination in her voice made him hesitate. Perhaps it was the accumulated despair of years without hope, or the painful memory of his late wife begging him never to give up on the boys. Without fully thinking, he ran back inside and returned with the money. "If this is a lie," he muttered, handing over the bills. "It's not." The girl took the money and asked to be let in. In the following minutes, something extraordinary happened. The little stranger knelt beside the triplets in the physical therapy room and began making strange movements over their bodies. She touched specific points, whispered unintelligible words, moved the children's small arms and legs in peculiar ways. To the absolute astonishment of the father and the professionals present, the boys began to respond. Small twitches turned into coordinated movements. Smiles appeared on little faces that rarely showed any reaction. The CEO felt tears stream down his face as he watched one of his sons raise his arm alone for the first time in his life. The second managed to turn his head completely. The third emitted clearer sounds than ever before. "How did you do that?" he asked, his voice choked with emotion. But when he turned to thank her, the girl had vanished, simply evaporated like smoke. He ran through the entire house, checked every room, questioned the staff. No one had seen where she went. For the next 3 days, the millionaire lived in ecstasy. His sons maintained their small progress, and he began to believe in miracles again. He installed extra security cameras, offered rewards to find the mysterious healer. He wanted more sessions, wanted to understand what had happened. It was on the 4th morning that everything crumbled. The boys woke up exactly as before. The special movements had ceased. The smiles had disappeared. It was as if the last few days had been just a cruel dream, Fury replaced gratitude. The CEO mobilized his entire network of contacts, hired private investigators, scoured every corner of the city looking for the little con artist. How dare she play with the pain of a desperate father? How could she have the audacity to give false hope to innocent children? It was during this obsessive search that he discovered the truth. The girl wasn't a miracle healer. She was something far more impressive and disturbing, a 4-year-old with extraordinary intelligence who had secretly studied his sons for weeks, observing through the property's gates, memorizing every movement of the physical therapists, learning techniques that she applied with surgical precision. When he finally found her sleeping under a bridge on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by other young beggars, his anger mixed with a reluctant admiration. How had an abandoned child managed to fool specialized doctors and create such a convincing illusion? The confrontation under the bridge took place on a grey morning, when the fog still shrouded the skyscrapers of the metropolis. The CEO stepped out of his imported car, his Italian leather shoes sinking into the cold mud. The little beggar was awake, drawing something in the dirt with a stick, surrounded by other children sleeping huddled on damp cardboard. "You tricked me," he said, his voice controlled, but filled with contained fury. The girl looked up without showing surprise. "Your sons moved. You saw. For 3 days. Then they went back to what they were before." The millionaire crouched down, getting to her level. "You played with the pain of a desperate father." "I needed the money." Her voice was firm, without a hint of regret. "And they were happy for 3 days. When was the last time you saw them smile like that?" The question hit him like a punch in the gut. The CEO clenched his fists, fighting the urge to scream. It was true. He hadn't seen that joy on the triplets' faces in weeks. "What did you need $1,000 for?" he asked, trying to understand the logic of this impossible child. The girl pointed to one of the boys sleeping nearby, visibly sick and with a high fever. "He needs medicine. He doesn't have papers to go to a public hospital." The CEO watched the sick boy and felt something stir in his chest. During his obsessive investigation, he had discovered part of the little con artist's story. She had been living on the streets for 2 years, ever since a tragedy destroyed her family. But the details remained hazy, and his search for answers had taken him to places he never imagined he would tread. It was on a scorching afternoon that he found the girl's stepmother. The bitter woman lived in a dilapidated tenement, where the smell of mildew mingled with cheap liquor. Her red eyes gleamed with malice when she recognized the description of the child. "That pest?" The stepmother spat on the ground. "She was trouble since she was little, always pretending to be sick to get attention. When her family died in the fire, I tried to take care of her for a few months. But the girl brought bad luck to everything." "What kind of bad luck?" The CEO tried to maintain his composure in the face of the woman's hostility. "Everything she touched went wrong. I lost my job, my husband left me, the neighbors started avoiding our house. The stepmother took a swig of hooch straight from the bottle. And she had a habit of imitating others. She would watch people and then copy everything they did. She even fooled a doctor once, pretending to have seizures so well that he almost admitted her." The millionaire felt a chill. The girl's ability to observe and imitate was far more developed than he had imagined. Where did she learn these physical therapy techniques? "Public hospital in the area. She slept in the hallways when I kicked her out. She must have been watching the doctor's work." The stepmother laughed bitterly. "She's always been too smart for her own good. That's why nobody can take care of her." When the CEO returned to the bridge the next day, he found the situation even worse. The sick boy had deteriorated overnight, and the little beggar was clearly desperate. She held the feverish boy's hand, humming a soft song that calmed the other orphans. "The medicine you bought isn't working," he asked, watching the scene. "It was fake." Tears streamed down the girl's dirty face. "The man who sold it said it was real, but my friend is getting worse." The CEO felt something snap inside his chest. For years, he had focused only on his own problems, on the pain of having disabled children, on the loneliness after the loss of his wife. But here was a 4-year-old carrying responsibilities that not even adults should bear. "I'll take him to my private doctor," he said impulsively. "Why?" Distrust flashed in the girl's eyes. "You hate me. I don't hate you." The millionaire realized it was true. "I'm confused. You tricked me. But you also showed me that my sons can feel joy." In the following days, while the boy recovered in a private clinic, the CEO began to better understand the little con artist's world. She had created a protective network among the abandoned children, teaching them how to survive through small tricks and skits. They weren't violent crimes, but carefully planned performances to elicit compassion and get food or money. "Have you ever thought about having a normal family?" he asked during one of his visits to the bridge. "Families don't want kids like me." She continued drawing in the dirt without looking at him. "I'm too smart, and it scares adults." "My neighbors are starting to complain," admitted the CEO. "They say you're showing up on my property, and it's devaluing the area." The girl finally looked up. "You want me to disappear?" "No." The answer surprised both of them. "I want to understand why a 4-year-old can do things that trained doctors can't." It was at that moment that she told him about the public hospital, how she slept in the hallways when the nights were too cold, how she watched the physical therapists work with patients, how she memorized every movement, every technique, every reaction of the patients. "I didn't cure your sons," she said with brutal honesty. "I just made them remember that they are capable of feeling good things." The revelation struck the CEO like lightning. For years, he had focused so much on the triplets' limitations that he had forgotten to celebrate their small victories. The girl, with her elaborate hoax, had done something that no doctor had managed to do: restore hope. But when he returned home that night, he found a letter from his main partners. They had found out about his obsession with the beggar child through neighborhood gossip. They questioned his mental stability and threatened to withdraw crucial investments from his businesses if he continued with that behavior unsuitable for a man of his position. The fortune that had taken years to build, the stocks that rose and fell on the stock exchange according to his business decisions, everything was being jeopardized because of a 4-year-old girl who had touched something deep in his soul. The pressure from the partners increased when photographs began to circulate in the business circles of the elite. Images of the millionaire talking to a dirty child under a bridge, carrying a sick boy to his private clinic, being seen in blighted areas of the city. The rumors spread like wildfire. Some said he had lost his sanity after his wife's death. Others whispered about a premature midlife crisis. During a tense meeting on the 40th floor of his corporate building, the CEO faced an ultimatum. The main investors, men in grey suits with glacial expressions, placed documents on the polished mahogany table. "Either you disengage from this embarrassing situation, or we withdraw our capital," declared the major shareholder, a bald man with small, calculating eyes. "We have reputations to preserve." The millionaire watched the papers that represented millions in investments, contracts that supported hundreds of jobs in his companies. His fortune, built through years of shrewd negotiations and shrewd investments in the financial market, was being threatened by a child who weighed less than his briefcase. That same afternoon, when he returned to the bridge to share his concerns, he found the place empty. The little beggar and all the other children had disappeared. Only a few marks in the dirt indicated where they used to sleep. A local resident said that social workers had appeared early in the morning, taking some children to different shelters. Despair took over the CEO. For 3 days, he scoured every shelter in the city, lying about being a relative of one of the children, bribing employees for information. His search became obsessive, neglecting important meetings, ignoring calls from clients, leaving his own children in the exclusive care of the nannies. It was on a rainy afternoon that he received an unexpected call. A familiar, childish voice spoke through a noisy public phone. "Stop looking for me," said the girl, her voice sounding more tired than a child should sound. "I'm causing problems in your life." "Where are you?" The CEO held the phone tightly. "I need to know you're safe. I'm taking care of the others. I found a place where we are safe." A long pause. "You have your family. I have mine." The call was cut off, leaving him with an emptiness in his chest that he hadn't felt since his wife's death. In the following days, he hired private detectives, offered hefty rewards, even considered using his political connections to mobilize official authorities. But the girl had disappeared, as if she had never existed. His searches led him to the most forgotten parts of the metropolis, tenements where entire families crammed into windowless rooms, vacant lots where children played among garbage and debris, abandoned buildings that had served as temporary shelters for dozens of the homeless. In each place, he found similar stories: abandoned children creating their own survival networks, adults who had given up dreaming, invisible communities existing on the fringes of society. It was during this journey that he discovered the true extent of the little con artist's intelligence. In a crowded city-run shelter, a social worker casually mentioned an extraordinary girl who had passed through weeks earlier. "She organized the other children so impressively," said the weary woman, surrounded by piles of paperwork and unsolved cases. "She created a system where the older ones took care of the younger ones, established times for improvised studies, even taught some to read using old magazines. Did she say where she was going when she left here?" The CEO tried to keep his hope alive. "She talked about finding a place where she could continue helping. That girl has a sense of responsibility that not even adults possess." The revelation hit him with full force. While he was worrying about contracts and dividends, a 4-year-old had taken on responsibilities that should be the responsibility of the state, of society, of adults. She wasn't just surviving. She was leading, protecting, educating other children in situations even worse than her own. 3 weeks after her disappearance, the CEO finally found her. She was in an abandoned building in the industrial outskirts of the city, a concrete skeleton that was supposed to have become a shopping mall before the construction company went bankrupt. The place had been transformed into a kind of organized community. When he climbed the cracked stairs to the 3rd floor, he found a scene that left him speechless. The girl had created different spaces within the abandoned structure: a sleeping area with old mattresses arranged in rows, a study corner where older children taught the younger ones, even a small infirmary where she treated the injuries and illnesses of the other orphans using knowledge she had absorbed during her observations at the hospital. "How did you know I was going to find this place?" he asked, watching at least 15 children of different ages who stared at him with curiosity and distrust. "You're stubborn," replied the girl, without stopping distributing pieces of bread to the youngest. "And you have enough money to hire people who would look for me until they found me." "Why did you run away? I just wanted to help." "Because your help was destroying your life." She finally stopped and looked at him directly. "Your partners wanted to take your money. Your neighbors were talking bad about you. Your children were getting no attention." The CEO sat down on a wooden crate, stunned by the maturity of that answer. How can a 4-year-old understand these things? When you have no one to protect you, you learn to protect others. The girl sat down next to him. And when you have nothing, you learn to observe everything. It was at that moment that she told him the truth about her miracles. She explained how she had spent weeks studying his sons through the gates of the mansion, memorizing every movement of the physical therapists, learning about muscle stimulation through medical books she found in the hospital's trash. She revealed that she knew from the beginning that the effects would be temporary, but believed that giving people hope, even briefly, was better than leaving them in total despair. "I learned that by watching how adults lied to me about my parents," she said with a sadness that chilled the millionaire's blood. "They said they would come back someday. It was a lie, but it made me feel better for a while. That night, the CEO went home with more questions than answers. He found his triplets playing alone in the physical therapy room, attended only by the professional nannies. As he approached, one of them raised his little arm in an attempt to greet him, the same movement he had made during the 3 miraculous days. The realization struck him like lightning. His children hadn't completely lost the abilities developed during those days. There was something residual, a muscular or emotional memory that remained. The girl hadn't created a false miracle. She had awakened something real that remained latent. But when he tried to call her the next day, he discovered that the abandoned building was empty again. This time, she had left only a letter scribbled in her childish handwriting. "Thank you for teaching me that some people still care. Now I need to take care of my street siblings somewhere else. They need me more than you." The girl's letter remained on the mahogany desk in the CEO's office for 2 weeks, while he struggled with a decision that would change his life forever. His partners had given a final ultimatum. Either he signed the documents transferring controlling interest in the companies to them, keeping only a minority stake, or he would face a legal battle that could completely destroy his assets. It was during a sleepless night, watching his triplets sleep, that he made the most radical decision of his life. The next morning, he called an extraordinary meeting and announced that he was liquidating a substantial portion of his assets, selling shares on the stock market, and converting investments into dollars for a completely different project. "I'm going to create a shelter for street children," he declared to his astonished partners. "Not a traditional institution, but a space where they can maintain their autonomy while receiving education and medical care." The room exploded in protests. The men in suits talked about madness, about throwing money away, about destroying years of work because of an irrational obsession, but the millionaire had already made his decision. In the following months, he used his network of contacts to acquire a large plot of land on the west side, beginning construction of facilities that followed a completely innovative model. Meanwhile, his search for the girl continued. This time, instead of private detectives, he hired experienced social workers who knew the roots of street children. It was through them that he discovered a complex network of temporary shelters scattered throughout the metropolis, places where groups of orphans settled for a few weeks before moving on to other spots. During this investigation, a shocking discovery came to light. A lawyer specializing in cases of corporate negligence approached him with information about the fire that had destroyed the girl's original family. The tragedy had not been accidental, but the result of inadequate building materials used by a local construction company in low-income housing. Technical reports proved that there was deliberate use of substandard safety materials, explained the lawyer, spreading documents on the table. Several families lost everything, some lost their lives, and the responsibility can be traced to a company that supplied counterfeit materials. The CEO studied the papers with growing indignation. The company responsible was still operating, had only paid negligible fines, and none of the affected families had received adequate compensation. Even more disturbing, he discovered that the girl herself had known this information for a long time. The revelation came through an unexpected source. One of the social workers he had hired managed to locate the child in a distant slum, where she had settled with a new group of orphans. When they finally met, on a hot afternoon in the shade of makeshift shacks, she showed no surprise. "You found out about the fire," she said, sitting on a cardboard box, watching other children play with toys made of recycled materials. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" The millionaire crouched down next to her, still trying to process the information. "Because first I had to be sure that you were different from the other rich adults." Her childish eyes carried a wisdom that chilled the blood. "Many have money. Few really care. You chose me on purpose from the beginning," he realized with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. It wasn't a coincidence that you showed up at my house. The girl nodded slowly. I watched you for months before I approached you. I saw how you treated your disabled children, how the physical therapists talked about your dedication, how you cried alone in the garden thinking that no one saw. The CEO felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. Everything was planned? Not everything. I really learned the techniques to help your children, and I really needed the money for my sick friend. She paused, looking at her own small hands. But yes, I chose you because I knew you had enough heart to understand suffering and justice. In the following months, while the shelter took shape, the legal process against the construction company responsible for the fire moved forward rapidly. The lawyer had managed to gather other affected families, creating a class action lawsuit that promised substantial compensation. The CEO discovered that his financial resources and connections were essential to giving credibility to the case. The little beggar initially resisted the idea of becoming directly involved in the process, traumatized by the possibility of reliving painful memories. But when she realized that other children orphaned by corporate negligence could benefit, she agreed to participate as a key witness. During the 18 months that followed, an extraordinary transformation took place. The shelter became a reality, with facilities that allowed children to maintain their independence while receiving formal education, medical care, and psychological support. The girl, now with greater emotional stability, revealed an academic intelligence that impressed specialized educators. She mastered complex mathematical concepts simply by watching others study, learned languages through casual conversations with foreign volunteers, and developed leadership skills that maintained harmony among children of different ages and backgrounds. Even more impressive, her methods of observation and imitation became pedagogical tools that helped other children with learning difficulties. Her relationship with the CEO's triplets evolved touchingly. Initially cautious, she gradually became a positive presence in their lives, teaching them about resilience through creative games and exercises that combined fun with physical therapy. The boys began to show genuine progress, motivated by the contagious energy of their new friend. But the real test came when the lawsuit came to an end. The construction company was ordered to pay millions in damages to all affected families. The portion allocated to the girl was enough to guarantee her financial future for the rest of her life, including higher education and all the resources a child could need. To everyone's surprise, including the CEO, who had become a father figure in her life, she made a decision that would define her character forever. Instead of using the money for her own benefit, she decided to invest the entire amount in expanding the shelter and creating an educational fund for children in situations similar to hers. "The money won't bring my family back," she explained at a meeting with lawyers and social workers, her small voice echoing in a room full of impressed adults. "But it can prevent other children from going through what I went through." The CEO, who had started that journey as a bitter man focused only on his own losses, realized that he had found something much more valuable than any financial investment: a true purpose. He completely reorganized his priorities, dedicating himself fully to social work, while maintaining only the essential businesses to support his charitable activities. The girl, now 6 years old, and a wisdom that continued to impress specialized psychologists, had found not only a family in the CEO and his children, but also a way to transform her pain into hope for hundreds of other children. The shelter became a model for other cities, proving that it was possible to break cycles of abandonment through genuine love and resources applied with intelligence. On a sunny afternoon, while watching dozens of children playing in the shelter's courtyard, the CEO realized that the little con artist had achieved something that no doctor had been able to achieve. She had truly healed his family. Not through false miracles, but by teaching them that true wealth lay in the ability to transform suffering into compassion and compassion into action.